something has changed, and it's not just in the numbers. On paper, Darnell Washington has only 6 catches through 5 games this season. That might not sound impressive at first glance. In fact, it places him 3rd on the team behind Jonnu Smith 17 and Pat Freiermuth 6. But if that's where you stop the conversation, you're missing the bigger picture. Because all 6 of those catches, they've come in the past 2 weeks. And that's not the only thing that's shifted. Over the last 2 games, Darnell has been on the field for nearly 80% of the offensive snaps. That's not just a random blip in usage. That's what Mike Tomlin would call a trend. And not just any trend, but a positive and potentially pivotal one for the Steelers' offense. Now, this isn't about hyping Darnell up like he's the second coming of Rob Gronkowski or some hybrid of Antonio Gates and Heath Miller. It's not about blowing things out of proportion, but it is about recognizing something real, something developing right in front of us. It's about a player who's quietly, and now not so quietly, evolving into a difference maker. And it's time people started noticing. Darnell Washington, since arriving in Pittsburgh, has always had a rare set of tools. There are things he could do physically that most athletes, even in the NFL, simply can't replicate. That's not hyperbole. That's just fact. At 6'7", pushing 270 pounds, with strength that commands double teams in the run game and enough speed to break off the line and create separation, Darnell is built different. And in a league where the line of scrimmage defines success, having someone like that, who can consistently win those battles, is pure gold. The Steelers have needed that. 4 years now, they've been trying to find consistency on the line, balance in the run game, physicality that lasts all 4 quarters. Darnell isn't the only answer, but he might be a key piece. He brings stability where there's been chaos, dominance where there's been hesitation. And now, with Arthur Smith dialing up sets that allow him to release into the flat, take on defenders downfield, and work in tandem with Broderick Jones, who's lined up next to often, we're seeing just how multi-dimensional he can be. Go back to Sunday. That opening snap against Cleveland wasn't just a random play. It was a statement. The Browns stacked the box, 10 defenders within 2 yards of the line. Everyone watching expected a slog, maybe a short yardage dive into a wall of defenders. But instead, Arthur Smith flipped the script. Darnell lined up exactly where you'd expect him to block, but he didn't block. He peeled off, found space behind the secondary, and turned what should have been a conservative run into a chunk play through the air. That's called using your personnel with intent. That's called trusting a tight end, not just to set the edge, but to change the game. And that's where this gets interesting, because Darnell wasn't always going to be featured like this. The Steelers made a splash when they acquired Jonnu Smith. Everyone remembered his 88 receptions last year, more than half of which moved the chains. He was supposed to be the clear number 1. Then there's Pat Freiermuth, a reliable option with good hands and a solid resume. Throw in Connor Hayward, who just snagged a gorgeous touchdown last week, and suddenly the room is crowded. That's not a bad problem to have, but it does raise questions. How do you feed all of them? How do you create a system where 3, maybe even 4, tight ends can contribute meaningfully without stepping on each other's roles? These are the types of headaches offensive coordinators love to have, as long as they can figure it out. But for now, what we're seeing is Darnell Washington slowly pushing to the front of that line. And he's doing it without flash, without ego, just by producing, blocking, and growing into more routes week by week. That kind of development doesn't happen on accident. It takes buy-in from the staff. Credit to Mike Tomlin and his crew for sticking with the vision. Credit to Arthur Smith for not abandoning what they saw in Darnell, even after bringing in another top-tier tight end. Credit even to the quarterback, because let's be honest, it takes trust to go to your tight end downfield when the play breaks down, especially when that tight end hasn't been the focal point of the offense. But now, Darnell's impact is impossible to ignore. It also opens up another layer of the conversation, one that has been hovering over this offense since the summer. Without a true WR2, what does this offense become? What is its identity? With Calvin Austin out and the outside receiver depth stretched thin, the Steelers have leaned more into multi-tight end sets. And why wouldn't they? If you're not getting production from your second receiver, and you've got four tight ends who can block, catch, and run, the solution becomes pretty clear. You lean on the weapons that are working. That's what made the Browns game feel like a turning point. Not just because of Darnell's performance, but because the offense finally felt like it was built around what it has, not what it wishes it had. And in that system, Darnell doesn't just fit, he thrives. He gives Arthur Smith flexibility. He gives the quarterback a safety valve. He gives the run game a dominant edge. Longtime fans might be having a bit of déjà vu. Back when the Steelers brought in Eric Green, there was a similar feeling. A big, physical tight end who could block, catch, and get vertical in a hurry. Green was special, no doubt, but he never quite had the blocking chops that Darnell brings to the table. That's what makes Darnell so unique. He's not a specialist. He's not just a red zone target. He's not just a sixth offensive lineman. He's both, and he's still getting better. He's crisper in his routes. He's faster off the line. He's more confident coming back to the ball, finding space in zone, picking up first downs, and dragging defenders for extra yardage. That kind of evolution in just his second year is a credit to his work ethic, his coaching, and the way this team has managed his development. When Jonnu Smith was brought in, there was talk about what it would mean for the tight end room. Some fans thought Darnell might get buried. Others thought Freiermuth would be on the move. And hey, those conversations still aren't over. But what has become clear is that Darnell didn't blink. He didn't complain. He just kept building. He stayed in the weight room. He stayed on the field. He studied. And now he's carving out a role that looks a whole lot like TE1. That's not a knock on Jonnu or Freiermuth. That's just the reality of competition. Darnell is forcing his way into more snaps, more targets, and more responsibilities. And that's what you want. You want internal pressure. You want a guy like him rising through the depth chart because he's producing, not because someone else got hurt. And here's the thing. Defenses are going to start noticing. They're going to start keying on him. And when that happens, it's going to open things up for everyone else. Because now, defensive coordinators can't ignore him. They can't assume he's just an extra blocker. They'll have to account for him in the passing game. And when that happens, this offense might finally find the rhythm it's been looking for. The ripple effect of Darnell Washington's rise is starting to reshape everything about how this Steelers offense operates. And while it's easy to get caught up in his individual impact, the real value might lie in how his presence changes the structure of what this team can actually do. Think about it. When you got a tight end who can line up in line, motion across the formation, or flex out wide, and be a real threat in every one of those roles, it forces defenses to make tough decisions. Do they bring in heavier personnel to match the run look? Or do they stay light and risk getting bullied at the line? That's the bind Darnell creates, and it's the kind of chess piece that makes a coordinator's job infinitely easier. But while Washington's breakout deserves its own spotlight, it also raises a crucial question that this team still hasn't answered. What's going on with the wide receivers? Because let's be honest, it's been quiet. Too quiet. Outside of the usual suspect, Metcalf, nobody else in that room has truly stepped up. Sunday's game painted that picture clearly. One catch, just one, from any receiver not named DK. That's not a stat. That's a red flag. Yes, Calvin Austin has been dealing with injuries. Yes, the depth chart is thinner than anyone would like. But it's not just about availability. It's about identity. Who are the Steelers outside of their number one receiver? Roman Wilson saw some targets. Scotty Miller got reps. But these aren't consistent threats yet. They're depth pieces playing starting roles. And that's a dangerous place to be, especially for a team that's quietly building momentum in a loaded conference. When you look at how this team has been constructed, it's clear the tight end group has become the security blanket. Jonnu Smith, despite his quiet stat line, brings experience and versatility. Connor Hayward, fresh off a highlight reel touchdown, is the type of guy who always finds a way to contribute. Freiermuth, when healthy, is still a solid option. But Darnell, he's different. He brings something they don't. And that difference is starting to create a gravitational pull in the offense. So where does that leave the receiver room? Honestly, in limbo. There's no true WR2 right now, and no clear path to one emerging from within. That's why Omar Khan has been working the phones. It's not a rumor, it's a fact. The Steelers front office has been actively seeking help at wideout, and along the offensive line. And while a move hasn't happened yet, the need is obvious. This team isn't just trying to be competitive anymore. They're trying to contend. That's a different bar. That's a different level of urgency. And when you're looking at your offense and seeing one wide receiver carry the entire vertical threat, it's time to act. Not because the offense is broken, it's not, but because it could be so much more. The problem is, you can't manufacture another DK Metcalf out of thin air. You're not going to find someone on the trade market who mirrors that skill set exactly. But you don't need a clone. You need someone competent, someone reliable, someone who can win a route, draw attention, and make defenses pay for leaning too heavily on the top guy. That's what the Steelers are missing right now. And the truth is, the numbers don't lie. After 5 games, Metcalf is tied for the team lead in receptions with 19, matched only by Kenny Gainwell, a running back. That alone tells you how much the passing game is leaning on the backfield and short yardage options. Gainwell's only racked up 79 yards on those 19 catches. Metcalf, by contrast, has 356 and 16 first downs. That's the gap. That's the imbalance. Then you get to Jonnu with 17 catches, Jalen Warren with 13, Calvin Austin with 10. And then it drops. Fast. This isn't just about distribution. It's about production. And without another perimeter threat to take some of the weight off Metcalf's shoulders, the entire offense runs the risk of becoming too predictable. That's the danger. Sure, the sample size is still relatively small. One of those 5 games was the Dublin matchup, where the Steelers leaned into the most conservative game plan imaginable. Passes were sideways, safe, designed to avoid mistakes. It was effective, but it didn't tell us much about what this offense can be when it needs to push the ball downfield. Still, even with the limited data, patterns are starting to form. And the clearest one is this: when healthy, this group can get by, but it's walking a tightrope. Metcalf is the only true vertical threat. The others, even the tight ends, can contribute, but they're not pulling coverage the same way. And when you're talking about building an offense for a long season, for a playoff push, for tough December games against elite defenses, getting by isn't enough. That's why Omar Khan can't wait much longer. The trade deadline is creeping up. November 4th is coming fast. And as other teams start to make decisions, whether to go all in or to cash out, opportunities will emerge. Veteran receivers who've fallen out of favor. Younger players stuck behind stars. Guys with bloated contracts who could thrive in a new environment. This is when the smart front offices start making moves. Quiet ones, strategic ones. And for the Steelers, this could be the difference between being a fun wild card team and being a real threat. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL rumor mill is already heating up this week with what could be a blockbuster shakeup in the AFC North. Sources close to the league claim that Lamar Jackson, the dynamic quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, has made a personal call to signal the start of a new chapter. This time, not in Baltimore, but in Pittsburgh. According to insiders, Jackson's endorsement could set the wheels in motion for a running back currently on the Ravens roster to make a surprising move to the Steelers. While the identity of the player remains unconfirmed, whispers around the league suggest that Jackson's influence behind the scenes played a significant role. Known for his leadership both on and off the field, Jackson has reportedly been in contact with key figures in Pittsburgh, subtly hinting that his former teammate could thrive under the black and gold. Lamar sees a fit, one source noted. He believes Pittsburgh's offense could unlock a new level for this RB, and he's not shy about putting that opinion out there. The timing of this potential transfer adds another layer of intrigue. As both teams navigate off-season strategies and look toward draft considerations, a trade of this nature could send ripples through the division. Ravens fans, who have grown accustomed to Jackson's electrifying play and the versatile skill set of their backs, may feel a sense of déjà vu if this rumor comes to fruition. Meanwhile, Steelers supporters are already buzzing with the possibility of adding a proven weapon to their backfield, someone who could complement their offensive schemes and offer a fresh dimension to their rushing attack. Industry insiders caution However, that nothing is set in stone. Trades of this caliber involve intricate negotiations, salary cap considerations, and the often unpredictable human element. Yet, if even a fraction of the chatter proves true, the AFC North could be on the verge of a seismic shift. Observers are keeping a close eye on Lamar's movements, interpreting his outreach not just as a personal favor, but as a potential harbinger of bigger roster changes to come. As the rumor spreads, speculation intensifies. Could the Ravens be parting ways with a key piece to satisfy Jackson's vision? Will Pittsburgh emerge as the unexpected winner of this covert maneuver? Only time, and perhaps another call from Lamar, will tell. For now, the league waits, captivated by the notion that Baltimore's own signal caller might just be orchestrating a play off the field that rivals anything he's done on it. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.